This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast brought to you by the Genesis Company, coming at you Tuesday morning. It's December 5th, and we're in this kind of in-season tournament pause time where because the Wolves didn't make the in-season tournament knockout round, their last game was on Saturday, and they don't play again until Wednesday. Their next opponent on Wednesday is the Spurs, who haven't played since Friday. The only games on Monday and Tuesday are these in-season tournament knockout games. So in this little break of time, Jace and I are going to kind of discuss a few themes that have come out the last few weeks, bigger picture from the Wolves. But first, so I don't forget, like I forgot yesterday, I want to remember that we have an extra set of tickets to give away for this Wolves Spurs game on Wednesday. 2 lower level tickets there. It's an extra game, so extra set of tickets. We're giving those away to Patreon subscribers throughout the season. To get those tickets, just send us a message on Patreon that lets us know that you are available to go to that game. That's patreon.com/DaneMooreNBA, patreon.com/DaneMooreNBA. All right, Jace, how you doing?
Good, man. About you?
I'm good. I kind of like this little break of time here because I didn't even know that there wasn't going to be other NBA games during the in-season tournament knockout games or whatever it is,
Yeah, they made it pretty clear on the schedule when I was like, I don't know what day these games are played. And Chris Hine was like, it shows right here, like when they first put the NBA schedule out, like the dates are pretty clearly listed as to when those games will be played and when the other ones. And I was like, oh, yeah. Yeah, I just
still okay.
Yeah, right. But what's interesting is this one is like an explained one of like the gap of okay, the knockout games are right now and everybody else waits and they play theirs.
Sure.
I think this year there's more gaps like this. Like the Wolves even have a few 3 days off gaps, and other teams have that too. There are plenty of times where I'll be like, okay, when does this team play next? They just played last night. And it's like, they played Saturday, now they play Wednesday.
I've noticed that too.
I don't know how we can't get rid of back-to-backs when we've got, or at least very much limit back-to-backs when we've got these huge gaps throughout the season.
The Spurs played on Thursday and Friday, and then they don't play again till Wednesday. And
at least this one's explained, but it's kind of insane.
And it does just feel like back-to-backs are sinking things more and more. Maybe it's the Wolves being better, and I'm like, I want to see them play good teams at full strength just to learn more, and it just keeps, I don't know, feeling like that.
It definitely is and I've seen this from other teams too, where I'm really starting to look at it okay, not only are guys not playing, but the quality of play is just worse. We saw, everybody saw the Wolves go play in Phoenix. Wouldn't you have liked to have seen them play Phoenix? Not dead tired looking, they look tired the whole game. And I know it's can't be an excuse. You got to play through it, but it matters. It matters. Those should be they are far too frequent.
And the
Wolves haven't
ones
had them yet. But the road ones are insane. Make them home if you have to do it. Otherwise, it's insane.
I think to the whole point of the in-season tournament thing, right? It's to make the games more competitive and more interesting. Well, that is the primary thing that is making your games less interesting right now are the back-to-backs, because players are resting on the second half of those, or just even if they're playing, they're playing worse. So I don't know. That's neither here nor there. Let's you wrote for this morning or yesterday after practice, just kind of about the clutch time offense of this team. Obviously, that was a key theme out of the Charlotte win. I don't think I really realized it in the moment until I kind of went back and watched it after we talked to Mike Conley at practice yesterday, of how meticulous the clutch time offense was in that Charlotte game. And that's kind of been something that's happened over and over. I think they had the 2 bigs out on the floor, right? In the first half of the fourth quarter. And then they sub Nas out, bring Kyle Anderson in. And that's when it was Mike Conley, high pick and roll, just orchestrating over and over and over again. So I don't know, maybe I had 3 bigs in my brain and was thinking about that, not as focused on it, but going back and watching it, man, Mike completely took over that game just from a point guarding standpoint. And that has really been a theme that you laid out throughout the season. And then this team has just gotten so much more effective in clutch time than they have been for the last few seasons. What stood out to you most about the clutch time offense? I know you had some of the numbers and stuff in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just looking back and remembering how bad it's been in the previous years. Like, I only went back as far back as like 2020, 2021, Anthony Edwards' first season. So basically, like the Wolves' clutch time offense since Ant's been here, and it's consistently like it ranks like 25th, 21st, 19th, or whatever. And when you watch it, it's awful. It's been awful. It literally is just, it turns into the most hero ball offense you've ever seen. And that was Anthony Edwards. That was D'Angelo Russell. And then when Karl Anthony Towns got the ball, it was like, I'm doing this too, because I never get the ball. And it was just like rush shot, forced long jumpers, like just guys kind of playing out of control. And then that leads to bad shots, which lead to easier buckets the other way. Like their defense has actually been pretty good in the clutch time, like, or at least not terrible in recent years. But the offense is awful. And if you remember, like that is literally why they lost the Memphis series. 2 years ago. Is like they'd have these fourth quarter leads. They would just go straight into isolation, hero ball, and then it would just totally implode on them. It would implode all over their faces. And that's been like a major issue. And Chris Finch is like, look, we realized that had to get better this offseason. And he said, yep, Ant's done a better job making decisions. And I would agree with that too. But like the biggest thing has totally been that you have a point guard who's consistently running sets. And I think what's surprising to me is like, is running his own sets. Like not that he's making them up on the fly, but like Mike Conley, we talked to him yesterday, and it's like, what's your communication like with Chris Finch? And he's like, it's pretty good. Sometimes I lean on him, and then there are other times where he looks at me and he's like, what do you got? and Conley's like, and that was kind of what happened again in Charlotte, where it's literally like, this guy is just can totally navigating, controlling the offense, even more so now with Anthony Edwards out. And it's just like, Mike, you just run it, you get us a shot, should be great. And it is like, you just see how having such a smart, good basketball player directing traffic, like how it looked like the Wolves just looked like in the final 4 or 5 minutes of that game against Charlotte, like they knew exactly what they were doing. They were in control. They were going to get a great look. And it's so much easier to execute when there's just kind of like a calm and a strategy to everything, and guys know where they're supposed to go and where they might get the ball. A comfort where it's kind of felt like hectic stall ball, like I don't know, I'm going to take on these two guys in the past and just hope this 22-footer goes down, even though it's heavily contested. Like it's totally like watching things that would just make you rip your hair out before, and now you watch and it's like, yes, and it's simple too. Like Mike said, it's just 3 different variations of the same set over and over again.
Right.
Because he's just seeing the ways that in which the defense approaches it, and he's playing off of it, and just kind of, you make Charlotte pick their poison and you react accordingly. Like it's been very good. And this is what good teams are supposed to look like in clutch time. And it totally is kind of like a Mike Conley directed show.
Here's Conley after practice on the late game offense.
Us repping those certain plays that we've done a million times and trusting each other in those moments. And I was happy with the way we finished the last game. Ran a couple plays back to back that we kind of got 3 different reads off of them and won that game. So I think guys are getting more accustomed to it and trusting each other during those times.
How is it different for you here too? Just that they know you better and you understanding them in space and all that.
Yeah, it's helped me a ton, probably even more than them, to be able to have a rapport with them, some chemistry to where I feel confident enough to say, hey, nah, like Cat, go over there, Rudy, you go over here, like put guys in different spots on the floor because I know what's going to work at that time of the game. So, and they trust me, they respect everything I say, and they know I have nothing but good intentions. So, I do my best to just try to put us in the best position to win.
It was interesting, Chase, going back and watching it and literally seeing the play where he said, "Nah, Cat, you go over here. Yes. Rudy, you go down there." Like that play, like kind of won that game or sealed it there too. And it's such
totally did clear Cat out of the play. Like, and it says a spacing option.
It's just congested.
Like, yes. Yeah. It's like, here's what we're going to do right now. That's going to win this game. Like it.
The interesting question off of this all, right, is like, all right, no Anthony Edwards in that game, who has been your home run hitter, game winner, like the guy you often play through in those clutch time situations, or they have historically over the last few years, like you said, when the offense always hasn't been as good. And the question I think we all have is like, can Ant be that guy while Mike is still like the brains of the operation and still kind of dictating and mapping out the floor in the way that he did against Charlotte, but while maybe the end goal is Ant. And I do think it is a different proposition when Mike is creating against Charlotte. He's trying to look for a rolling Rudy Gobert or a popping Karl Anthony Towns or like a rolling driving lane for Cat to hit there. It is different with Ant, who, when you want to set him up, is basically setting him up somewhere in the high quad of the floor in that sort of way. How much can Mike do that and empower Ant at the same time?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, I think like the perfect balance is probably Mike's running a play that ends up in Ant's hands with Ant coming off a screen or something to that effect. But I mean, I don't know. You watch like Mike Conley pick and rolls at the end of games, like where it's going to be a good shot, and maybe the ball just gets to Ant for like a corner three or something, and like you're still taking the big shot. But if you are going to over and over again over the course of the season bet on like good late game offense to get you a good shot, what are you going with? Which one are you thinking is going to, against good defenses or whatever, like end up with the good shots? Like,
well, I think that's the question. Is it good defense? Is not like is Charlotte. Like it was also Charlotte.
Yeah, I would say, and Oklahoma City's not great defensively either, but they were lights out in the clutch time in that game as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then I'm just thinking off the top of my head now about the Golden State game, and that was Ant who found Mike there, and that was Ant doing the point guardy stuff too. So I'm not ruling it out or anything.
I'm not either, and I think Ant's on his way there, and Ant's decision making gets better and better every year. It's not like Mike Conley's decision making. Like there still are plenty of games where if Ant closes the game out, it's because he hit some tough shots. Where like you're like, not great, but we got. Don't worry about the work we did on this math problem. Look, we got the right answer. Yeah. It's a tough balance of like, when do you feel the need to empower? When are you like, no, this team is like really good right now. We got to win as many games as possible. We think this is the best part of the equation. I think it's good in general for Minnesota that it has multiple routes to navigating clutch time offense. And maybe you can look at it from like a matchup to matchup basis. Like these guys don't have anybody who can check Ant if he's aggressive getting to the rim.
Sure. Yeah.
We can clear it out and let him go to work here and be confident we're going to get a good shot. Where otherwise it might be like, all right, maybe Ant struggled. Maybe they have a better matchup for Ant. Like maybe we've just seen the way they're committing guys to Ant. Maybe we let Mike Conley do some of this. So that's where I think it can be a little more pick and choosy. But I think these few games just give you a reminder of like Mike Conley is a tremendous late game navigator of offense. Like I looked at this before he was traded last year. Utah had the 5th best clutch time offensive rating, and like who was on that team? Like I mean they had some decent pieces, but like that shows like he can kind of navigate it over long courses of time. In the last 10 years that he's played the majority of the games he has kind of like engineered top 7 clutch time offenses 50% of the time. Like he does this a lot. He knows how to do it. Like other teams kind of lose their minds, like a Boston, like they lose their mind in the end of like 5 minutes to go, and it just turns into straight isolation. Like Mike Conley's teams continue to play simple, good offense. Like it's with the Ant thing, like I think it really can be, that probably is your best solution, is like sometimes it's Mike running it, and other times when you really like the matchup, it's Ant running it. But I think that comes on Chris Finch's shoulders a little bit to determine when, because Ant's always going to want it, and Mike's always going to think he should have it. He'll certainly, I think, will cede to Ant if that's the call, but he thinks he should have it, and Ant's going to want it. So then it's going to be up to Finch to be like, we're going to go here. I mean, maybe if there's a really bad one from Ant or something, and he jacks one up, it's like, okay, the next possession you go to Mike, something to that effect.
Yeah, like Finch has to be like a thermometer, an Ant thermometer,
right?
Right. Because so let's say the Boston game when Ant takes over in the clutch, I think if you just try and run the same offense with Mike Conley pick and roll like you did against Charlotte, I think you lose that game. I mean, that's a better defensive team.
Their late game offense in regulation against Boston was terrible. They scored like 2 points in the last 5 minutes of the game. In overtime, he made some tough shots. Yeah. They almost didn't get to overtime because they were awful in the last.
You're right. I forgot about that fourth quarter there. I don't know. I mean, the ideal thing, right, is having somebody. Can Mike pick at it like the whole time? Like he sees something like he did in the Charlotte game, and over because 5 minutes, like there's 5 minutes of clutch time. There's 5 minutes at the end of that Charlotte game, and what I thought was great about Mike, it wasn't just like one action. It was him and Rudy like over and over. It was like, all right, Cat here. We found Kyle here who found Troy Brown for a 3, or like some of these different things. I think I'm with you. I think some of it is Finch, but I think some of it is if the ball is put in Mike's hands, he also needs to be like, all right, we're going to be running like 12 clutch time offensive possessions here. I need to be in my, and I trust Mike's ability to be able to do this.
He's
but like
talked about
Ant's
this.
been,
Yep.
Ant's been chilling in the corner for 2 possessions. We
Yep.
know what Ant gets. Like he's got to think about that. Like, all right, interchange. Like let's make something happen here. So Ant stays engaged, so we can go back to that next look, like playing kind of 2-3 clutch possessions.
And he talks about that all the time of like in his head, he's got sequences in his mind of like, we're going to do A, B, and then C. Like, I know what we're going to do these next 3 possessions down the court in the half court. And they're all kind of are playing off each other. And I have full confidence if Mike Conley's running the offense over the course of 5 minutes, he's going to know like this possession, we're going to get it to Ant and we're going to get it to him with at least like 14 seconds on the shot clock. So like he can do something if it's right there right away. It's going to be in his hands. Ant can make the decision off of this. We're just going to get on the ball off some kind of action that puts him in a position that's maybe advantageous the second he catches the ball. Like he's talked a lot about like point guarding Mike has, and these are all things that like he discusses. It's not like it's like we'll put it in Mike's hands. Mike will run pick and roll, and that's all we're going to do. It's like we'll put it in Mike's hands, and Mike kind of decides what we're going to do. And that might not include Mike at all.
Take a quick break here, Jace. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. And oftentimes when we do Prize Picks segments, it's like before a Sunday football slate or Thursday night football slate or whatever. I just wanted to show everyone kind of what the slate looks like just tonight for the in-season tournament game. We got the Knicks and Bucks play against each other, and then it's the Lakers and Suns tonight. And I was just clicking on this, and I clicked the former Timberwolves that are playing tonight. Malik Beasley, 12.5 points, more or less. D'Angelo Russell, 14.5 points, more or less. Torian Prince, 7.5 points, more or less. But I just wanted to show everyone there's a whole bunch of, it's not just points, rebounds, and assists. It's 3-pointers attempted. Is Jalen Brunson going to take 7 or more of those? 3-pointers made, free throws attempted, all these different sorts of things. And so I think maybe in particular for the nights where it's like just national TV games, whether it's the in-season tournament or TNT, I think these are kind of fun if you're going to be watching the national television games that night to put a little Prize Picks packet together here. And, let's just those 3, if you get 3 right, that's 5-1 on your money, 10-1 on your money. If you do 4, we love Prize Picks. It's fun to play, whether it's NFL Sunday for football or just for NBA, MLB, whatever. There's a million different sports out there. So prizepicks.com, Prize Picks app, promo code Dane for a $100 sign up bonus if you are interested in playing along with us.
My one tip that I have some friends who play this a lot, and their formula is anybody the Bucks are playing, their guards, the opponent's guards, more points.
All right, so deal.
No, the Bucks. It'd be like Jalen Brunson tonight.
Oh yeah. Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
Yes, yep. Because Malik Beasley and Damian Lillard are turnstiles. So like it literally, and I think it's done pretty well. From all the texts I get.
I like that.
Hit again. Yeah. So Jalen Brunson more than maybe tonight would be a good one.
I did think that. I really like the Malik Beasley signing by the Bucks in the offseason because I mean, you and I share a mind on this. Like, we think he's an incredible shooter. We also talked about, though, the entirety of the time when he was here, how problematic his defense was. And I guess I just didn't expect the Bucks to have that many overall defensive issues that he would get exposed as much. But
I
haven't watched a ton of them. But
he signs a small deal, and it's like, and you are a prominent player in the rotation. Like you're like playing 30 a night. It's like, all right. It's another
They're
example.
Like, this is a better Wes Matthews. And then they're like, oh, wait, there's 2 sides to the floor.
Yeah, it's, I mean, we talk about this all the time, but it's like, these are the decisions that 2 or 3 years from now, maybe sooner next year, but really like 2 or 3 years from now, Minnesota's going to be living in. Like, which very imperfect player are we going to play 30 minutes alongside our other good players? What
imperfection can you handle the
mask? Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's I actually really like, and that's, we say two-way player all the time, or we want guys to be able to do X, Y, and Z. And man, the NBA is tough. Like it's tough to be able to do multiple letters of the alphabet. I want to talk about Rudy's rim protection a little bit, but I also want to talk about a little bit more just about point guard play in general. And I wanted to touch on
this too.
On the Spurs thing.
No. We'll get to that.
Yeah. Okay.
But so you
Okay,
were
go
talking about like the sequencing. So I just thought I'd pull up I
Yeah,
did a
there you go.
Conley's corner on being a true point guard a while ago.
Mhm.
And this kind of leans into the Spurs thing. But Mike, after the Boston game, when he did like nothing, he was like 3 for 8, and he's like, that was one of my most impactful games. And I was like,
Yeah.
how so? And Mike, then he said there were times where Boston would make a little mini run, and then Mike would come down the court and in his head dial up a sequence of like 3 straight plays, like I mentioned, that they could go to that would play off one another and like lead to good stretches of offense. And then his quote was like, and we executed every single one of them, got the ball to exactly who we wanted to go to, the matchup we wanted, and we executed. And it's like, man, that's how the play worked. That's how it's supposed to be. It wasn't just, let's see if we can win these next 3 minutes. It's like, this is how we're going to win the next 3 minutes. This is how we're going to win this next minute. That kind of stuff really gets me excited about my position and my role. And that's like late game too. It might be Ant. He might in his head be like, Ant right here. Ant these next 2 times down, getting these 2 different looks. Like, it's just when you start with him and you're letting him make the call and not just giving it to Ant and having Ant dribble up the court and maybe like running a pick and roll that kind of fizzles out and then it turns into isolation. Like, and then you're like, okay, hopefully he makes this 22-footer. It's more like a plan of attack. And when you have a plan, like, you're much more likely to succeed. And like I said, it very well can end up in Ant's hands, and Ant looks like the hero at the end of the play, and that's what you want. That's option A. But just the way to get there, I think, makes a big difference.
You know what it's reminded me a lot of, man? Chris Paul and Devin Booker in 2021.
Yeah. Yep.
And I mean, Chris Paul was like legit in the MVP conversation that year. I was looking it up this morning. And that season, Chris Paul turned 36 at the end of the season. Mike turned 36 at the beginning of this season. I mean, I've just personally always kind of enjoyed Chris Paul. I know that's not necessarily like a popular opinion, but
I agree with you. I mean, you can not like the antics, that's fine, but like the actual basketball player has been a joy to watch for his entire career.
I have watched a lot of them. I watched a lot of that Thunder team that one year. I was really like,
you're an original Dort fan. So yeah.
OG Dort. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that Phoenix team too, because I had watched that Thunder team so much, and I was like, Chris Paul just can like get you with nothing to like high 40 wins at that time. And it was for all these reasons we're talking about with Mike Conley. It's like so many I was reading that your Conley corner piece, and it's just like, if it was like Paul said rather than Conley said, and like maybe it was like Mike is like, I don't know, maybe the wording would be a little bit different, but the things that Mike Conley is telling you just sound like Chris Paul quotes in a way. And do you remember there was like that I'm addicted to it quote about Chris Paul making the finals?
Yes.
You remember that came out? And then in your piece, Conley was like, I'm addicted to that feeling of success and an accomplishment of something I just did. It keeps me going. I was like, and why are they that different? Why are they?
I don't know. I mean, Mike, at the beginning of the year, when I talked to him specifically about winning a championship, he's like, I'll just sit there and be walking around my house and I'll just start stretching because I want to like win a championship that bad, like, and so thinking of all the little things, like, what do I have to do to best prepare myself to get through the whole season, to be there at the end? Like, I don't know. Like, maybe a bunch of guys will get there by the end of their career. Like maybe that is how Devin Booker will be, and Anthony Edwards maybe at 36 will be that player. I don't know. I don't know what Mike Conley was like at 22. Like, I don't know.
No, man. I think it's the evolution of the true point guard. When the true point guard plays in the NBA for 17, 18 years, like, you are just storing things and knowing things, I think, in a way that so many other players don't. I'm not saying Devin Booker can't be like a really smart player.
I just meant in terms of like
Yeah.
commitment to winning, like the hunger to win, like that those guys have. And I don't know if it's because neither has ever won a championship or whatever, but
surely a factor.
Yeah. But that to me stands out. But like I totally agree with you on the point guard thing. Like they've since they were 7, they were taught to like run an offense, try to get this guy the ball, take care of the ball. Like the defense is doing this, so here's what we want to do. Like that's information that they start storing. When they were playing in middle school basketball, and then
Mike was talking about that yesterday.
Yeah, 25 years, of like, what do you do when the team goes into zone? Like we try to get somebody here and here, like, and schemes change and whatnot, but the general principles and you continue to build upon that. There are not many of those left. There are almost none.
Well, it's and this goes to the San Antonio thing
Right.
we were referencing of like there are more and more teams nowadays playing minutes without a point guard on the floor. Obviously, the Wolves do that when Mike Conley's off, right? Jordan McLaughlin's been hurt, but they cobble it together with non-true point guards like Kyle Anderson, Nikhil Alexander-Walker, Ant, whatever. And it's interesting. San Antonio is doing that with Jeremy Sohan. Like they're starting Jeremy Sohan and having him play point guard. And I remember like being really intrigued by that concept like 5 years ago with Ben Simmons. Like that was, again, this is like when Ben Simmons was like on the rise, looking to be one of the best players. And I'm like, that's kind of smart. Like there's part of me where I'm like, that's kind of smart. It eliminates the issue in many ways of not being a shooter. If the ball is in your hand and you're a threat to attack, teams can't play off of you, right? Whereas if Ben Simmons is off ball in the corner, if Jeremy Sohan's off ball in the corner, now you've got the defense loaded up on wherever else the ball is. So like part of me thought, I guess, that it was a smart like evolution of the game. But you and I like we think about this a lot actually with like Utah, or we did last year when we were watching them, or have this year, like, yeah, they just don't have a true point guard out there and they're not getting into X, Y, and Z. Or, I mean, like the Spurs are going to have a bad drought in the game on Wednesday against the Wolves because Jeremy Sohan, is going to have a couple turnovers because he's not a polished point guard at all yet. And the Wolves, the offense bogs down a lot of the time when Anthony Edwards isn't out there.
Yeah,
so
right.
I get the logic of the move in that, like in a spacing league, it's so important to like not find ways to unscrew yourself with spacing. But there's just still room, man, for the elite point guard in the NBA, or the elite thinker point guard in the NBA to just, again, do what Mike Conley did at the end of that Charlotte game, or we've seen Chris Paul do for years, or whatever. Even just like your average Monte Morris or something like that. There's value in that. So it's something I wanted to talk to you about because we talk about this like privately a lot, and I just think we're on this like curious place right now where it seems like the point guard's dying, but it still seems so valuable.
It seems valuable, but who's stepping into that role? Who are the guys?
Yeah,
younger players. Like how many of them are out there? I think the closest we're going to get now is like a Tyrese Halliburton, and I do think that's part of the reason why with his skill set and whatnot, and his ability to see the court and make decisions. Like he's certainly like the on-ball version. He's the ball dominant version of it, but like I think that's why he's a true separator right now. Is that there aren't many players out there like him. And I know, like, just even like the side when I talk about point guards, like I'd bring up his name and Mike Conley's like, I really like Halliburton because there's just not many point guards. Like he is as much looking to get off of it as he is to score it. Like,
sure.
And so, but the number of guys like that, the number of like point guards out there, so small. And we see like point guards aren't really getting drafted high either, like they're just like, they're not valued. Even though I used to think it was so intriguing. I originally loved the idea of Boston like going as defensive as they did with like Marcus Smart, who's not really
that's a good
point
example
guard.
too. Yeah.
But watching them collapse playoff series after playoff series with their fourth quarter offense, just freeze. I mean, just go like 6 minutes without scoring in huge games because they just don't have any like offensive direction, because it just turns into like your turn, my turn with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown going against either that. Going in stacked defenses, or like I remember they almost lost that game 7 to Miami where they almost blew a massive lead. And it was because I think in the last 4 minutes, Marcus Smart took like 5 shots.
Yeah.
and it's because and it's like there's nobody.
It was the opposite of the Mike Conley game against Charlotte. Like literally.
Yeah. It's just like it just doesn't end up in the right spot, like, and because when it is in the right spot, those guys are going in stacked defenses because there's no movement. So watching that enough makes me just be like, I think it's almost a must to have like a real point guard, unless you are just that much more dominant than everybody else.
Yeah, I thought it was like it can work without it, but it's a luxury if you have it. That's kind of I asked Finch about this yesterday. That's kind of what he said. I'll play that clip. San Antonio doesn't play a traditional point guard.
Yeah.
There's a couple teams around the league. I mean, you guys kind of off the bench are doing that.
Yeah.
Too. I'm just kind of curious what you think like the advantages of that can be, and just kind of that popping up more and more around the league.
Yeah, I think one is it helps your pace, because anyone can bring it. I know it forces tough matchup problems sometimes in transition, as when you're doing that. So it has like an added benefit there. I think it's kind of just speaks to the growing fluidity of the game in general. There's less set play call anyway. So it's not like somebody's got to get you organized and kind of call a lot of sets. So it's kind of like where the game's evolved to. But of course, if you have a true and classic point guard, they still stand out. Still have great value.
Maybe more so at the end of games.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably 100% right, because at that point in time, it's a lot of either pick and roll where you need a guard who can create and make shots, or try to get organized in your sets. So.
I wanted to leave that part in where you kind of followed up there with the more at the end of the games, because I think that's
and it was noted it was 100% right. Yeah.
Well, he says in his answer when he's like justifying the no point guard thing for them or for San Antonio or forever, he's like, well, the game is more grab and go and there's fewer set play calls. Well, immediately when he was saying that in the moment, I'm like, yeah, in the first 40 minutes of the game, but it is what happens in the playoffs or at the end or the end of regular season games. It isn't grab and go anymore, right? It is, even if Jeremy Sohan does grab it, he's probably like, okay, we need to act like, is Trey Jones in the game? Like, can we find him?
Right.
Or even with the Wolves too, like that's not when Cat's going to grab one and go. He's going to be like, there's 4 minutes left in the game. Where's Mike Conley?
Specifically, Troy Brown said yesterday, like they're really valuing possessions at the end of games. Like, and that's just it. Like, that doesn't mean you're running down and making like a transition turnover, because that's just crippling. It's like, we need to score on this possession.
It's like,
I think the game has devolved, by the way, when Finch says it's evolved to where the guys are grabbing it and just going and there's less play calls and stuff. Like, I think it's devolved. But
well, I think that the thing is maybe it's like over corrected. Like there is value in that, right? It is like, if you guys can grab, and this hurts the Wolves a lot of the time against teams, and it probably will at times against San Antonio, the Wolves struggle with cross matches, right? Like, that's just because their teams guard them weird and they guard teams weird, right? And so it's like, shit, I'm in the corner and now I got to go guard the opposite wing who's running like, they get messed up by that all the time. And the faster then the opposing team can get into the other side of the floor, the more cross match, the more delayed it is. Like, there's value. And I bet you a bunch of the transition teams, the best transition teams, do a lot of that.
Yeah, but isn't it funny? Like, it's like you can still grab and go if you have a point guard out there. It's not like the point guard is going to be like, you didn't pass me the ball, dude. You just went.
Well, there's a little bit of a delay. I get what you're saying, but it would need to be like the
freedom
pass like right away. Yeah,
the freedom. Yeah, but I mean, I also think like that's when like Jordan McLaughlin's been out there. Like I've thought in the past they've done a good job of not just deferring to McLaughlin, and somebody else will grab the rebound and he just goes up the court. Like, so a lot of times it's like that can be coached. Like if you get it, you just go. Like, don't worry about it. Like, I understand your thought of like, well, no, we always give it to the point guard. That can be coached out of you very quickly, I would think.
Right. No, that is true. And then I guess that's all like part of the balance here. I think my main takeaway is whatever the value of that balance is really goes away in the last 5 minutes of games.
And in playoff basketball, I think as well. But the thing is that I think that's hard, is everybody would love to have a Mike Conley. But I think the important thing about having like a Mike Conley is that you have him on the court making those great decisions and you're not losing shooting and you're not really losing that much defensively. Like, he's still a very adept defender as well. So like, yeah, if you can get this great, super well-rounded point guard who can manage the game, that's option A for anybody. It's just, there aren't that many players out there like that. It's like, well, why don't you just have a true point guard? It's like, because we're losing shooting or we're losing defense. It's like, well, there are only so many guys like Conley, which is why I think like a value of like a Conley is sky high, because you have him out there. So you just are a 10 times smarter basketball team and you're not losing like hardly anything else. Like, you are totally fine if somebody's just attacking Mike Conley defensively because you feel like it's a less than 1 point per possession proposition.
Yeah. We shouldn't stop developing that type of player.
Yeah.
Like, if Mike Conley works today at 36 some 16-year-old right now shouldn't feel like they can't try and grow and emulate in that game, but instead it is, I don't know, I feel like now we're being like old guys or whatever.
I
Like,
agree,
"Oh,
but
no,
even,
get
I
threes."
mean, like when I talked to Mike about this for that story a couple of weeks ago, he was like, he really thought it kind of came down to like guys see what makes money, and like
Yeah.
scoring points makes money. So
interesting.
like as like a point guard, you're much more interested to try to be like, and Dame sees the whole floor, but like you see like a Damian Lillard and you're like, I want to do that. I want to score
Yeah.
30, get buckets.
But
And
there's so many fewer players who could be a point guard and shoot the way that Dame can. It's
Right.
like Damian Lillard would still be good if he wasn't as good at step back threes, right? Like,
Yep.
and I
Yep.
think there's more people out there who can do that, right?
Yep.
But
Yep.
we're not prioritizing that as much. All right, let's grab another break here. And then I'm going to come back and talk about some Rudy rim defense. All right, back to Jace Frederick. Jace, this has just been, it's been a theme of the entirety of the season. Obviously, Rudy's activity defensively and just what he's making happen defensively for this group. Guys just not taking shots at the rim. That is becoming, to me, maybe I'm just catching it more and more as time goes on. I'm looking for it more and more. But the frequency with which guys just like record scratch, but from like 3 or 4 feet away from the basket is so high in the Wolves defense right now, or the Wolves defense is creating it. They're allowing the second fewest shots at the rim in the NBA, and that is leading them to have the best half court defense in the NBA, and overall, even while getting hurt a little bit in transition, still just being the number 1 overall defense in the NBA. I really do think it starts with the infrequency with which teams are willing to take shots at the rim. What's standing out to you about that?
Yeah, and like you said, the record scratch, I think that's a good way to put it. It's like, it's not even just like you get in there and you make like a clean kick out. It's like they are so unsure of what to do with themselves. Like they get in there and like you could be going with a pretty full head of steam, and then you're like
on 1 foot. It's like it stops. 1
yeah,
foot or
like
something.
you like, and you're just like mid jump, and you're like, that's Rudy Gobert, and so you either see them like turn their body and like throw one up behind them because they're confident that won't get blocked, and then it might not even like touch the rim off the backboard, or like you've seen guys like almost like shoot and try to like stop and pass like to themselves, and the ball just goes to nowhere. So it's not just like this is a missed shot. It's often like a terrible shot that leads to like an easy rebound outlet, or like a turnover that leads to points the other way too. Like I do think that sparked some definite huge like runs for Minnesota because it's so easy to then get in transition. Misses at the rim lead to so many transition opportunities because literally the shooter is out of the play getting back defensively. It's just like if you can make these super incredibly talented basketball players so indecisive, they automatically become 10 times worse at whatever they're doing. And Rudy Gobert, just like his mere presence, like just totally.
Dude, it's when he's
players.
not ready. Even like there's sometimes where guys are stopping short, record scratching, whatever.
Yeah, where he's not sitting there.
He's not ready.
Right.
He's really not going to block the shot if you take it. But it's like, they got to reading this in like a quarter of a second. Like, all right, I'm going to my left. Like, am I going up here or not? And it's like, well, on my left is Rudy Gobert there, and then they just stop. And it's like, sometimes if you were just, to your point, decisively just go left, right, and go take it.
Yeah.
Like, he's not going to get all of them.
We see guys who do that. And it's like, oh, you scored there because you played with some courage, like, and yes, Rudy's going to deter you, but like, I think guys like, they just don't want to get embarrassed, like they don't want to get stopped, all these types of things, because that does take you down a notch. So it's almost like I'd rather not put myself out there, like,
I like the courage term. It's like, and there are times, it's always like, once a game, like somebody finishes and scores well on Rudy.
Yeah.
Like there's
it almost shocks you a little bit when it happens.
Yeah, you're like, oh. And then what is the theme of every one of those? It's like head of seam, decisively went to the basket, finished up and around him,
And that's
but
the whole point
delay.
And that's the whole point of the defense now. And like what Finch talks about is like, how do we, and often times guys, even with the head of steam, don't do it. But how few times can we allow somebody to even go at, a straight line drive with Rudy? Because if they don't have that, then they have no chance. And that's true. I love it was like it was a Warriors game a while back, but like watching Dario Saric get the ball and like it was kind of late in the shot clock because he'd already passed it, got it back. Yeah, he did like he did like a no jump push up because he figured he caught a moment where Rudy wasn't going to jump. So he was like, oh, this won't get blocked. And he just like, it didn't go in. It was like, this is the most unnatural shooting motion. This looks like a 4-year-old who is just trying to get it to the rim.
Yeah, we've all been there. We've all been underneath the basket, and somebody who's like 5 inches taller than you.
Yeah, and you're just like,
you're like, I don't know.
I'll take my left hand and just fling one up towards the backboard because I'm just trying not to get it blocked. And that's how it looks. And it's like,
but it's crazy. It's Dario Saric, who's 6'10". Nick Richards had a terrible one of those against
late in the game.
Charlotte game.
You're relegating NBA players to like what you and I would look like against somebody who's way better than us in pickup basketball. Like it literally makes them look so bad and so dumb.
He's killing their courage. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, their confidence is just shaken. Like you can tell they just like they're like, so many times you see it, like I don't want the ball. Like don't give me the ball in a position where I'm going to score, which is exactly how I played basketball growing up. Like I don't want it. I'm just going to pass it back. I suck. That's how they look like they feel when Rudy's guarding them or guys driving at him. They're like, crap, like there he is, like it's really impactful and like fun and funny to watch, frankly, on a day-to-day basis.
It is. I'm curious now in my mind of like what is putting teams in that situation. I don't totally like have that figured out, but it's this like somewhat idea of giving enough resistance on the perimeter so that once they get to Rudy, they don't have that full head of speed and decisiveness to go finish. Like,
or at least Rudy's in position by that point.
Yeah.
It's like an off guard, like, oh wow, you beat him so fast that I'm not even over there.
Exactly. And I think like Rudy deserves like, I don't know, 80% of the credit for the Wolves allowing as few shots at the rim as they do. But it is something that he needs some assistance with and help with too. And I do think, and I'm gonna play this clip from Conley here, I do think the length and some of those things do too. It just seems like those things are sewing well together. Like whatever the other 4 players are doing are sewing well into bringing the man to Rudy, who is then kind of thwarting it at the rim. Here's Conley on the rim protection.
Obviously, Rudy's such a big part of that. That's probably somewhat intuitive to us. But what are the other 4 guys doing to help prevent shots being taken?
Man, you said it. Rudy's been a great rim protector, but I think all 4 guys have done a good job of just staying connected to bodies, being in help situations. Even when Rudy's there, we're swarming the ball, and we're a long team. You add Rudy, you add Kat, you add Kyle, you Nas, Jaden, like everybody's just long athletes who can alter shots and just make you think twice when you're going up to pull up or do anything like that. So guys are not just relying on Rudy to do it. We're still trying to stop our man from getting around us. We're still trying to stop them from getting a shot off. So I think that's all kind of playing a big part of it.
Jace, before Rudy got here, I kind of like moved in my mind to Fitch's point, like the evolution of the game, that like the value of rim protection was going down and the value of like elite perimeter defense was going up. And I think that's not true.
Yeah, I will say
it's both always, but like
I would say the one thing, and I think this is what's going to be so interesting, is like what makes you think that? And it's probably because of the playoffs, right? Like, so that I think it is going to be something where we're going to marvel, rightfully so, at what Rudy does all season. But for much of NBA observers, and why you had that opinion, is that you watched like teams go 5 out against Utah in the playoffs and they couldn't keep up. And Rudy is, if he has to come help, immediately leaves an open corner shooter. We saw Maxi Cleva hit like 4 threes in a row, or whatever. So I think that's why you think that. And so that'll get tested in the playoffs. But I am all for like that. Nothing can be done about that now. And for right now, we should just marvel at what he's doing and his impact right now.
Yeah. And I do think a difference is we're seeing, I mean, not like every night, but we're seeing a decent amount of Rudy out in perimeter coverage, right? Not just lurking at the rim. And what I think repping that out as well, and Rudy like when Rudy's out on the perimeter and another team doesn't go on a run because Rudy's out there guarding like Chet Holmgren or something like that, Rudy's confidence is going to grow in that, like, yeah, I don't need to be at the rim here because we do actually have a lot of other perimeter defenders who, even if I don't have their back, like they can probably hold their own defending a drive from the slot, you know?
Mhm.
And if Rudy can kind of rep that out internally in his mind, then come playoff times, he's not going to overly help in there and then be caught closing out a step short to Terrence Mann over and over and over
Yeah,
again.
yeah. He
Like,
has
it's
to
the other-
practice. He has to practice what he preaches because he always says like,
Yeah.
if I'm guarding a guy on the perimeter, they have to know like I don't need help. I got it. It's like okay,
Mhm.
but you have to have the same confidence in
Yeah.
everybody else because we've seen that's where you get burnt. Is like you're coming in and you maybe had to do it because you know a lot of the Utah guys were terrible perimeter defenders.
Mhm.
You know, so then yeah, you did have to go in there. Otherwise, it was a layup. But you have to have faith in these teammates, and just like they have to have faith in you defending on the perimeter, you have to have faith in them.
Mhm.
And like you said, I think the more opponents they can play like that, the better. Because the Kings still kind of like showed
Sure.
some weaknesses there.
Mhm.
You know, just more and more reps of like, how are we going to do this? Let's have faith
Mhm.
in it. Let's have confidence in our plan. And if it needs tinkering, come up with one.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's huge. It's going to be huge.
I do think his confidence in that has grown in one that he said it, but like kind of course he's going to say that. I take it to be that he has grown in his confidence in leaving the rim and that he just does it. He's agreed to do
yeah.
it some more. And like I'm seeing him swarm fives on the perimeter sometimes. Like they pick up their dribble and he's like
Yeah.
in attack mode, you know?
You know what's different though? Think about the Clippers and that series loss. Think about the Mavericks. Like he was guarding somebody in the corner.
Yeah.
And that's different. He's been guarding guys in the actions, you know,
That's
like
true. Like the
up
five
top.
on the pop.
Yeah,
or like
yeah, like
the delay or
a
whatever.
Porzingis or a Chet are not standing in the corner,
Mhm.
and so like the Wolves might have to almost like twist their matchup so he's not because I do think like if
That's
I'm an
a good call.
opponent, I'm putting Rudy. If Rudy is on it, somebody in the corner, like I'm putting that player in the corner because I'm
Sure.
like let's just take him out of this play defensively.
Mhm.
And like I still think the Wolves have good defensive personnel where like if you want to play 4-on-4 basketball, okay, but like that is
Yeah.
the look that we haven't really seen yet. We talk a lot about the perimeter. It was different in those playoff series that they
Mhm.
lost.
I think some people are thinking about I agree with what you're saying there. I think some people are playing in their mind the 4-5 corner three blocks that
Yeah.
Rudy
Yep.
has this year.
Yep.
And like that's great, you know, that he's had those, but that's probably not going to be an every possession thing. A lot of those
Yeah.
blocks are at the end of the second quarter. He's selling out at the end of regulation.
Yeah.
That was the Darius when he blocked
End of
Dario.
the shot clock.
Yeah. But no, that is an interesting concept is like when does Rudy have to guard the perimeter, but it's just a corner shooter. I mean, he does that a lot against like Aaron Gordon or when they're in the lurk, as I call it.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
you know Cat's guarding the 5 and Rudy's guarding the one non-shooter, like maybe Sohan.
And that's a non-shooter, right?
Mhm.
It's when a team has a non-shooter that like an Aaron Gordon or something.
Yeah.
That's when they do that super effectively.
But if it's
just-
like a fine shooter who's going to take them
right
and
confidently
willingly
and knows that
wants
the
to.
game plan is you have to shoot it, so there's full confidence when they shoot
Mhm.
it. You know, like
Yeah, I like the idea of rotating him out of that. I'm with that.
I did
Like-
too.
like,
Also
I
do.
think that's
Put him on somebody else.
as
Or
of
make- yeah.
December 5th. That would be my like very basic
Right.
construction of the defense in that sort of way.
We
But
went
point,
off-
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we went off. We went a little off tangent here. Like you wanted to talk about the other guys like playing well defensively too.
Mhm.
I wanted to go with something like that Troy Brown said. That's so different than last year. Like Rudy obviously is way better than last year, but
Mhm.
like Troy talked about how do you go about your defensive matchup when Rudy's out there? He said this after the Thunder game. He's like, if I'm guarding a run off the line guy like Isaiah Joe or a guy like that, just knowing I run him off at the rim and Rudy's there, that guy will be hesitant, so it lets me get back. So I just keep on working my way back. Or Rudy takes my guy, and I've just got to go get his man and box out. That last step right there, that last sentence, was so often forgot last year by Minnesota's players of like, Rudy is taking my guy. I need to get over to his guy and get a body on his guy. Where so often,
him.
like we remember, we remember like, oh, Rudy would force the miss, and there's the offensive rebound put back by his guy, and Rudy would throw his hands up. Like you've got guys like professionals, like a Troy Brown, who's like, my job's not done here because my guy is getting to Rudy. I need to get over there and put a body on to make sure that guy's out of the play or at least help Rudy out here. Like those extra steps that were so often missing a year ago.
Yeah, it's the like when teams are getting offensive rebounds, it's not the offensive rebounds that like fall into the dunker spot on either
Right.
side. Because that's like if you're Troy Brown and you're coming back in, it's like you're pushing that guy down to the base, you're boxing out, pushing him down towards the baseline. And those are the more profitable offensive rebounds for the other team. Now the Wolves are still getting exposed on the long rebounds to the top of the floor, but
the shooting on those is terrible because it's just a new possession. It's just a new possession. Yep.
Yes, which is very different than I just got an offensive rebound 3 feet from the hoop. Like I'm either going right back up for a putback or kick out for an open three. And I think that's a really good point by you, because that has changed how much offensive rebounds are hurting this team. If it's long ones, like we don't like that either. I do that at the beginning of every game. I'm like, all right, first long miss, the other team gets it every single time. Yeah. But to your point, it's like, all right, now they're just back at the top, 14 seconds on the shot clock, right? Because it's and you're in the half court defense where the Wolves are awesome. Like that's a less than a point per possession proposition at that point there. And so that is, and to the Troy Brown point, it's more guys like that doing that. Like Taurean Prince did that last season. It's just understanding the value of that small thing, right? And it becomes not a small thing when it's something that's helping one of your greatest weaknesses, which I do think also is empowered by Rudy.
Yeah. I just think you've got a roster full of those guys now in general. Like I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I'm sure thinks the exact same way. Like,
he totally does. And he's just like coach, like you watch him clear out box outs all the time. I mean,
he's always doing what's supposed to be done, because he's thinking about the game literally all the time. He's been great.
It's why it's honestly that in and of itself, like even remove the shooting or whatever from Nickeil and Troy and Shake, is like Troy and Nickeil are doing those things more often than Shake is. You know what I'm saying?
And they've always been like, and Nickeil for sure has shown that he's like in the playoffs last year and whatnot, that he's also a little things guy. Like, it's when the shooting should just for guys off like that, like the shooting should just be a bonus. You know, like that should be like, oh, we're not going to lose if he's making these. There's a good chance we don't lose anyway because of all the extra things he's bringing to the court. And Troy, I guess I didn't know that.
I didn't.
But he certainly looks like that. He looks like that type of player who's like he's doing everything else.
He's got 11 offensive rebounds this season. 9 of them are on corner crashes.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's it's just that's
in his playing time. I know
that's and it's like I think to, and not to be like this is why Shake shouldn't play, but like the thing I'm thinking about is like, okay, Nickeil's doing those small things, and I'm seeing his offensive game grow. Yeah, he's become a much more effective offensive player. Troy is doing those little things, plus he's the shooting threat out there, and so then it's like if those guys are doing the small things and doing a little bit more on offense, well, that's where the delta was supposed to be between them and Shake Milton, right? Like Shake was supposed to be this offensive scoring punch guy. Well, yeah, like Nickeil or Troy aren't going to just isolate and go get buckets and maybe ways you hope Shake could, but they're doing enough offensively that it just is like, and again, and maybe we should just hit on this, like Ant sounds like he might be coming back on Wednesday against the Spurs. Jaden probably like Christmas, maybe a little bit before that. He returns. J-Mac coming back. It's like, I do think the rotation is going to be defined by the guys who are doing these little things for their defense, because their defense is what is delivering for them. Or just a small thing.
I'm like the biggest, supporter of all time. I don't think, I think maybe he'll be in it to start. I think when the team is fully healthy, I still don't think Jordan McLaughlin will be in the rotation. I think Troy Brown would be over Shake Milton, and that will be the only difference.
Okay. Yeah. No,
Nickeil has taken on so much of like those backup point guard duties. Nickeil has, pretty comfortably. So like, I really do think that they will kind of continue to roll with that. There will be games where like maybe the second unit looks so bad offensively in the first half that J-Mac will then get those minutes in the second half. But I think their ideal 9 now would probably be the original 5 starters: Nas, Kyle, Troy, Nickeil.
Yeah. And man, and credit to Nickeil for doing some of the point guardy stuff. Like, I didn't think he really had. I knew he like grew up with the ball in his hands and stuff like that. But even just watching his first, 10 games, like coming to the Wolves, or even kind of all through the playoffs, it was just like a little bit too audacious of a passer. Some of the drives to the basket were crazy. Like that's really not happening that often.
He's toning it way down. Yeah,
and it's like, and the perfect example is just that he has that little like slow dribble in 14-footer. They're playing drop coverage. He's coming in. He's hitting that all the time, where I think 22-year-old Nickeil Alexander-Walker goes, all right, I got a big and drop. I'm going to try and attack and sprint past them and finish around them because I'm faster. It's like, nope, under control. I'm going to take a shot, an open shot that I can make 50% of the time if it's open. Let's go to that. It's not going to be a turnover. It's not going to be anything crazy where they're going 5-on-4 the other way. Like, I didn't know the Wolves had guys that seem just like playoff players, like really seem like playoff players. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker does, and Troy Brown Jr. does off the bench too. And that's in addition to Kyle Anderson, who's obviously that off the bench too.
Yeah, Nickeil, I was very confident in after like watching his postseason basketball last year. I was like, that guy's a playoff player.
Yeah.
Troy was like Shake. Troy was a guy who like wasn't in the Lakers playoff rotation.
Yeah.
So like that for me was like, I don't know if he is, but you are asked to do different things for the Lakers. It's like, if you're not going to hit those jump shots, that is so necessary when you're just playing with LeBron and AD, not super surprising, I guess, where like other teams, the little
him and Matt Ryan just became irrelevant with the Lakers because they were like, only shoot corner threes. That's it.
Yes, exactly. And don't play anything. Like, you're just going to stand there. That's all you're going to do. And for so many guys, it's like,
and then they don't make
such a hard skill to have.
Yeah,
it's hard to make. You miss your first three, and now it's all you're thinking is, I'm still standing here, and I missed my last three, and I know this is all I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
I never talked to Tori about it, but I have to think that head game, it's such a terrible role to be in. Like, it's the role that you and I are like, Nas can't just be standing in the corner. Like, and the Wolves, I think, realize that every few games too. They're like, he's doing too much of that. Let's get him more involved in actions. The Lakers are like, Troy, you stand there.
Yeah.
You catch the ball and you make those shots, and just watching every possession, it's like playing outfield in baseball. And you're supposed to stand there, and then a screaming liner is hitting. It's like, go get it, like,
totally.
And pros can do it, but like, man, if you're like high school, you're like, I've just been standing here for like.
I'm not even sweating.
Yeah, right. Like, I've been watching people on the tennis courts. This is so boring, like. Yeah, like, but Troy does so many little things that I guess I haven't just seen him enough play. Or maybe the opportunity hasn't been there, but like, he's been great to watch do everything else. And I am now confident too that like, those are things that translate. I don't know if he'd be as like, I still expect him to go through some poor shooting spells and whatnot on this team. Because he's not like this elite shooter. But just keep doing everything else, and then you'll still be invaluable to the team.
It'll just still be worth playing.
Yes.
Regardless, like, it doesn't need to be just tied to the shooting. But yeah, I think what we're trying to say to tie it to the Rudy thing is like, can the guys who are out there with Rudy on defense do the things that empower Rudy to be elite, be a problem at the rim, or just overall? And again, like we said many times, there weren't very many of those in Utah. And it's seeming like this Wolves roster, just even if it's at the bottom of the rotation, have a lot of guys that are, contributing positively in that way. All right.
The only thing that's like, what we're going to see is if like the only person you'd be worried about in the playoffs, if Rudy gets stuck on the corner, and like you and I said, we think he should get swapped out of that,
if possible,
early switch, off ball switching, whatever, to not be in that spot specifically. But the only person I'd ever be worried about then is like, who is Carl guarding? And is that person going to try to get to the rim and force like, and Carl's been good defensively, but it's just not fair to be like, like when it's a Harrison Barnes, it's like, well, what's supposed to happen here? Those types of matchups. Those are like the only things right now that I'd be concerned about, because they do have so many guys that I just don't really think can be exposed defensively. And that's not even a knock on Carl. It's just like, you're just in the worst matchup. Like, this team's roster construction puts
you're guarding you're on the right side of the floor and they're running a split action over here, and you need to navigate that. And Rudy is a mile away from home in the opposite corner.
Right. Like, and those are the only things, like, and Carl will continue to get reps on those, but like, and I only say it's the worst thing because everybody else really like is difficult to compromise. So like, those are otherwise.
I guess
like,
to the Carl point though is like, if Rudy is out on the perimeter, they are benefiting from Carl's rim protection. Though if he's the low man, or it's just like that ends up being the rotation.
If he's the low man, then
he can provide something there that
Utah did not have with anybody else. It was only Rudy. It was the only like, and again, that will take reps of like, nope, Carl's the low man here, Rudy, not you.
Again, why it's good. There's a lot of season left. like there's going to be, and they're going to lose some games, like you said,
Yep.
like the
I
Kings
most
game.
look forward to those matchups to see how they adjust and how they handle it. I most
Absolutely.
look forward to those. It's fun to watch them play. They're
Mhm.
dominant defense, but like I look forward to the things that compromise them to see how they react and adjust to it.
It's the single most telling thing about like what this team's season is or ceiling is, and we only get those every so often. Probably not Wednesday against San Antonio, though they're gunning threes. But that's not really the point of it, right? It's an effective perimeter orientation. So yeah, next two games, we got the Spurs on Wednesday night at Target Center, and the Wolves head back to Memphis on Friday. Just quickly want to mention that Britt and I are going to do an episode after the game on Wednesday, so that'll be Thursday morning. And then rather than Kyle and I doing one Friday morning, we're going to do one of those post-game live shows on Friday after the Memphis game. So that's the schedule for the rest of the week. Jace, appreciate you doing this. I know you got to get off and run to practice, but thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
Alrighty, until I guess it'll be Thursday with Britt after the Spurs game. He's Jace. Follow him on Twitter at Jace Frederick. Check out those pieces. Conley Corner rules. Like, it is actually my single favorite thing to read this year that's coming out in Wolves writing. Was that every 2 weeks you're doing that, Chase?
Yeah, every 2 weeks. Usually on Sunday's paper, like online Friday.
It's great, and it's like super. Some people are probably listening to us being like, "Oh, Dane and Jace, like, here we go, 2 episodes in a row. It's all Mike Conley. Woo!" Like, read the quotes, and like Jace's quotes are like he's getting these in one-on-one, so it's not like I'm not tweeting them out or somebody else or the team. It's Jace and Mike are talking one-on-one, so that's the only place to find those quotes, and it really like gets into what I'm really enjoying about it is better understanding the mentality of Mike, which again opened up the Chris Paul thought to me. What is the last one is Conley Corner. We're trying to
this last one was on him. That was like his sportsmanship one, the most recent one. The guy
Timberwolves guard is the ultimate sportsman. Yep. Yeah. Which is not all about the sportsmanship award, but
but it is mentioned in there. But it's kind of part of how he approaches it. And there's some funny things in there and whatnot. That one's probably a little less like inter-basketball-y, or like you'll like learn something basketball wise out of it. It's a little bit more Mikey.
But read it with the Chris Paul like lens on it. It's if you're
there's a little bit more agitation to it than like he'll ever get into, like that's in his mind anyway, of like, here's how I'm going to get you back.
Yeah. It's good. Okay. So check that out at the Pioneer Press. You're following Jace on Twitter at Jace Frederick. I think that's actually the pinned tweet on his profile right now, if you want to read the most recent one of that. Until Thursday with Britt, he's Jace. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.